Fame, fortune, and the Flask, the tragic fall of 14 Hollywood icons. Behind the dazzling smiles, the tailored suits, and the gold-plated Academy Awards lies a silent graveyard of shattered souls. What if the glamorous cinematic legends you have always idolized were actually prisoners of their own meteoric fame? Beneath the blinding, manufactured lights of classic Hollywood, an insidious and unrelenting darkness reigned supreme. Studios did not just manage these monumental icons, they owned them entirely. Executives ruthlessly fueled their biggest assets with illicit doctor-prescribed narcotics and callously watched them drown in rivers of liquor just to ensure the cameras never stopped rolling. These are the unspeakable, chilling truths of silver screen gods who unknowingly traded their sanity and physical health for immortal stardom. Devastating secrets deliberately, buried under decades of aggressive PR spin and red carpet luxury. From hidden mental breakdowns to deadly, studio-enabled addictions, the tragic reality of these beloved stars will permanently alter how you view cinematic history. Subscribe to the archive to continuously uncover the raw, unfiltered, and deeply haunting history of the entertainment industry. Frank Sinatra. The chairman of the board never merely entered a room, he fundamentally consumed it. Frank Sinatra was the undisputed architect of American swagger, a cultural juggernaut whose velvet vocal cords could seduce millions while his icy blue glare could instantly terrify the most powerful studio executives. Yet beneath the immaculate tailored suits and the legendary Rat Pack bravado lay a man deeply shackled to his chosen vice. His signature drink, Jack Daniels over precisely 4 ice cubes, 2 fingers deep, with a mere splash of water, was not just a stylistic accessory. It was a daily, unrelenting requirement. Sinatra's consumption was distinctly ritualistic rather than entirely chaotic, allowing him to maintain a terrifyingly sharp facade even as the alcohol coursed through his veins. Off-stage, this dependency frequently manifested in a famously volcanic temper, resulting in shoved reporters, suddenly exiled lifelong friends, and a perpetual atmosphere of walking on eggshells for his entourage. The profound paradox of Sinatra was his absolute invulnerability in the public eye. He was simply too colossal, too economically vital to the entertainment apparatus for anyone to stage an intervention. He marched triumphantly into his twilight years, his voice deepening into a gravelly testament of a life lived at maximum velocity. When he finally passed away, he was buried with a bottle of his beloved whiskey, a poignant and brutally honest tribute to the one companion that never betrayed, abandoned, or questioned him throughout his tumultuous century. Elizabeth Taylor. With her hypnotic violet eyes and an aura of uncompromising royalty, Elizabeth Taylor was the definitive matriarch of cinematic glamour. She was a woman who commanded millions, collected priceless diamonds, and survived a staggering 7 marriages, yet fought her most agonizing battles entirely behind closed doors. By the dawn of the 1980s, the crushing weight of global scrutiny and deep-seated physical pain had driven her into a perilous cycle of self-medication. Taylor's morning routine had terrifyingly devolved into champagne breakfasts and hidden tumblers of vodka just to face the glaring studio lights. However, her defining moment of absolute triumph did not occur on a movie set, but rather in a moment of unprecedented vulnerability. In 1983, she shattered a massive societal taboo by checking herself into the Betty Ford Center for severe substance abuse. At a time when celebrity addiction was fiercely hidden by publicists, Taylor dragged her personal demons kicking and screaming into the harsh daylight. She did not merely survive the insidious Hollywood machine. She fundamentally rewired it, destigmatizing rehabilitation for millions worldwide. Her subsequent pivot to relentless philanthropic activism proved that her unparalleled beauty was vastly eclipsed by her immense resilience and profound empathy. Judy Garland. Judy Garland was the ultimate sacrificial lamb upon the glittering altar of the Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer studio system. Catapulted into immortal stardom at the tender age of 16 as Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, she was systemically stripped of her childhood and relentlessly treated as corporate property. Studio doctors placed her on a horrific, government-sanctioned merry-go-round of amphetamines to endure grueling 18-hour shoots, followed seamlessly by powerful barbiturates to force her to sleep. This chemical manipulation hardwired a devastating lifelong dependency, driving her toward heavy alcohol use as a desperate coping mechanism when the prescribed pills failed to numb the profound isolation. Despite possessing a generational, earth-shattering vocal talent that brought audiences to their knees, Garland's internal reality was a landscape of deep financial ruin, shattered marriages, and crippling self-doubt. She poured every ounce of her profound suffering into her live performances, transforming them into haunting, visceral cries for rescue that audiences routinely mistook for theatrical passion, tragically passing away from an accidental overdose in a modest London. Flat, far removed from the emerald brilliance of her youth, Judy Garland remains Hollywood's most urgent, heartbreaking cautionary tale regarding the catastrophic human cost of manufactured perfection. John Barrymore. Universally revered as the Great Profile, John Barrymore was the undisputed crown jewel of American theater, a man whose absolute mastery of Shakespearean dialogue left critics weeping in the aisles. He possessed an inherent, regal magnetism that seamlessly translated to the booming silent and early sound film eras. Yet, Barrymore's descent into chronic alcoholism was as epic and theatrical as his greatest stage performances. The liquor, initially consumed to quiet the immense pressure of his legendary family dynasty, eventually eroded his once flawless memory and physical grace. Sight. By the 1930s, the greatest Hamlet of his generation was humiliatingly reliant on increasingly massive cue cards, completely unable to retain even the simplest lines of dialogue. Studios brutally exploited his fading grandeur, casting him in painfully self-parodying roles where he essentially played intoxicated caricatures of his former glorious self. His liver completely decimated and his immense fortune squandered, Barrymore lived out his final days in a haze of profound confusion and physical exhaustion. His tragic narrative serves as a stark, terrifying reminder that even the most monumental, seemingly untouchable artistic genius is fundamentally defenseless against the relentless erosion of severe addiction. Richard Burton. Richard Burton was a force of nature, possessing a thunderous, classically trained Welsh baritone that could command the heavens and a brooding intensity that captivated global audiences. His explosive headline-dominating dual marriages to Elizabeth Taylor created the blueprint for modern paparazzi culture, fueling a lifestyle of unimaginable excess and volatility. Burton fundamentally believed that absolute brilliance and the bottle were inextricably linked, frequently consuming up to 3 bottles of vodka daily while executing complex, Academy Award-nominated performances. On the set of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? His alcohol-soaked reality perfectly mirrored his character's vicious torment, resulting in a cinematic masterpiece born of genuine, raw suffering. However, the staggering physical toll of this relentless chemical assault rapidly aged him, dulling his striking features and corroding his magnificent voice into a raspy shadow of its former glory. Despite desperate, fleeting attempts at sobriety and an intellect capable of matching the world's greatest scholars, Burton simply could not outwit his chemical demons. He died of a sudden brain hemorrhage, leaving behind a legacy of staggering, unfulfilled potential and serving as a tragic testament to the destructive paradox of creative genius. William Holden. William Holden embodied a very specific, melancholic archetype of American masculinity, rugged, exceptionally handsome, yet carrying a deep, simmering sorrow behind his golden boy smile. In cinematic triumphs like Sunset Boulevard and The Bridge on the River Kwai, he projected a cynical, magnetic world weariness that perfectly resonated with post-war audiences. However, Holden's off-screen existence was a desperate, losing battle against severe, isolating alcoholism. As the decades progressed, he retreated further from the blinding glare of the Hollywood spotlight, preferring the numbing, uncritical company of his liquor bottles to the intense demands of an adoring public. The studios willfully ignored his noticeable on-set intoxication, prioritizing his massive box office draw over his rapidly deteriorating health. His death remains one of the most starkly devastating tragedies in industry history. Bleeding to death alone in his Santa Monica apartment after a drunken fall, his body remained tragically undiscovered for several days. The man who had famously narrated a film from face down in a swimming pool met a chillingly isolated, quiet end, abandoned by the very industry that had ruthlessly extracted his youth and vitality. Robert Mitchum. Robert Mitchum was the original undisputed architect of cinematic nonchalance, carrying a sleepy, heavy-lidded gaze and a barrel-chested swagger that made him the ultimate film noir anti-hero. He approached the Hollywood machine with a deeply ingrained, almost hostile indifference, famously joking that he only acted to afford expensive liquor in premium establishments. Mitchum's relationship with alcohol was entirely brazen. He regularly consumed staggering quantities of bourbon on set, inexplicably managing to deliver flawless, electrifying takes through a dense fog of intoxication. His infamous 1948 arrest for marijuana possession, which would have instantly annihilated any other career, only inexplicably enhanced his dangerous counter-cultural mystique. He functioned at a level of chemical consumption that would have hostilized ordinary men, frequently engaging in brutal bar brawls and disappearing on massive, multi-day benders. Yet through sheer, freakish biological fortitude and undeniable raw talent, he survived deep into his 70s. Mitchum wore his extensive scars, both literal and figurative, as a badge of honor, forever remaining the brilliantly chaotic outlier who forced an entire industry to play entirely by his deeply flawed rules. Errol Flynn. In the cinematic golden era of the 1930s, Errol Flynn was the breathtaking embodiment of pure, unadulterated adventure. As Hollywood's premier swashbuckler, he bounded across pirate ships and romanced leading ladies with a devastatingly charming, devil-may-care grin. But Flynn did not merely act out these reckless fantasies. He ruthlessly lived them to the absolute maximum. His infamous Malibu estate, darkly christened Cirrhosis by the Sea, was the epicenter of legendary, days-long debauchery. Flynn's dedication to inebriation was so profound that he literally injected vodka into oranges to smuggle alcohol onto strictly monitored film sets. This relentless pursuit of chemical oblivion rapidly destroyed his athletic physique, transforming the once gorgeous leading man into a bloated, chronically ill shadow of his former self by his mid-40s. Directors grew incredibly weary of hiding his slurred speech and physical unreliability in the editing room. When his body completely surrendered at the shockingly young age of 50, the coroner's report read like a catastrophic medical encyclopedia. Flynn essentially sprinted toward his own demise, firmly cementing a legacy as a man who passionately kissed danger on the mouth until it finally swallowed him whole. Peter O'Toole. Peter O'Toole was an exquisite, razor-sharp contradiction, a classically trained, ferociously intelligent Shakespearean actor who also proudly operated as a world-class, professional hellraiser. His legendary breakthrough in Lawrence of Arabia permanently etched his striking, piercing blue eyes into the cinematic pantheon, but the grueling desert shoot also catalyzed his immense capacity for liquor. O'Toole fundamentally viewed excessive drinking as a romantic, essential component of the artistic experience, resulting in legendary, mythical binges that ended with him waking up in foreign countries with absolutely no memory of the preceding days. Despite suffering severe, agonizing internal bleeding and having vital organs surgically removed due to alcohol-induced decay in the 1970s, he miraculously managed to throttle back just enough to ensure his physical survival. Unlike his tragic contemporaries, O'Toole inexplicably secured a profoundly lengthy third act, continuing to earn prestigious Academy Award nominations well into his twilight years. He remains the ultimate baffling anomaly of the drinking class, a man who relentlessly pushed his body miles past the breaking point, yet somehow survived to peacefully tell the tale as an honored elder statesman of the theater. Ava Gardner. Ava Gardner possessed an earthy, devastatingly sensual beauty that absolutely terrified studio executives and hopelessly captivated the world's most powerful men. She fundamentally rejected the polite, subservient mold created for female stars, opting instead to curse loudly, love fiercely, and drink formidable men firmly under the table. Her tempestuous, glass-shattering marriage to Frank Sinatra was a legendary collision of two massive egos heavily lubricated by immense quantities of whiskey. Gardner openly admitted she drank not to numb her reality, but to aggressively amplify it, utilizing alcohol to turn up the volume on a life she demanded to live on her own uncompromising terms. Whether she was skipping expensive studio shoots to attend fiery Mexican bullfights, or stubbornly matching legendary directors drink for drink on set, she remained absolutely, defiantly authentic. As her health inevitably failed in her later years, resulting in a secluded life in London, she fiercely rejected all public pity. Gardner unapologetically owned every single one of her chaotic choices, passing away as a fiercely independent pioneer who deliberately shattered the restrictive glass ceiling of female celebrity. With tequila shot in hand. Montgomery Clift. Before the rival of Marlon Brando or James Dean, there was Montgomery Clift, achingly beautiful, fiercely intelligent, and completely revolutionized screen acting with a profound simmering emotional vulnerability. He was notoriously selective, immersing himself so deeply into his characters that the psychological toll was immense. The absolute turning point of his tragic narrative occurred in 1956, when a catastrophic car crash, leaving a Hollywood party, physically decimated his flawless, highly insured face. Though reconstructive surgery miraculously saved his career, the profound psychological trauma and subsequent reliance on powerful painkillers and heavy alcohol completely fractured his soul. Clift morphed into a desperately isolated ghost, frequently completely unable to navigate basic social interactions without the heavy crutch of liquor. His performances in his final years transformed into agonizing, painfully raw documentary-like glimpses of a man actively dying from the inside out. Hollywood quietly distanced itself from his unreliability, abandoning the pioneer of method, acting to a profoundly lonely, quiet demise in his townhouse, forever solidifying his status as the industry's most beautiful, tragically broken casualty. Clara Bow. Long before the modern concept of viral fame, and Clara Bow was the original, undisputed it girl of the Roaring Twenties. She possessed a kinetic, electric on-screen energy that practically vibrated through the silent film era, capturing the wild, rebellious spirit of an entire generation. However, her meteoric rise deliberately masked a horrifically abusive, deeply traumatizing childhood that left her completely psychologically unequipped for the crushing weight of global superstardom. The studios ruthlessly commodified her vibrant sexuality, while the vicious tabloid press relentlessly hunted her, fabricating deeply malicious rumors about her private life. Overwhelmed by severe anxiety and crippling depression, Bow frequently self-medicated with alcohol, culminating in increasingly erratic public behavior that further alienated the conservative studio heads. Realizing the toxic industry was actively destroying her fragile mental health, she made the unprecedented, incredibly brave decision to walk away from Hollywood while still in her 20s. Retreating into strict, lifelong seclusion to battle her deep-seated psychological demons away from the vicious camera lenses, Bow's is a chilling indictment of a predatory system that extracts the brilliant spark of youth and callously discards the hardest stint left behind. Mary Astor. Mary Astor was the absolute epitome of sophisticated, razor-sharp elegance during the golden age of cinema, most notably starring alongside Humphrey Bogart in The Maltese Falcon. Yet her polished on-screen persona stood in stark, jarring contrast to a deeply tumultuous private life, heavily plagued by intense public scandal. In the 1930s, the unauthorized, malicious publication of her deeply intimate diary during a vicious custody battle completely exposed her private affairs, subjecting her to an unprecedented level of brutal national slut-shaming. To cope with the immense, suffocating humiliation and the constant, judging whispers on film sets, Astor quietly turned to the bottle. Her drinking drastically accelerated into a severe daily dependency, severely jeopardizing her professional standing and leading to a terrifying, highly publicized mental breakdown in 1949. However, in a stunning narrative of redemption, Astor sought aggressive institutional treatment, heavily embracing rigorous therapy and strict recovery programs. She triumphantly reclaimed her absolute dignity, authoring several successful memoirs and living out her remaining decades in peaceful, sober clarity, proving that genuine survival in Hollywood requires immense, quiet fortitude. Barbara Payton. Barbara Payton's catastrophic descent is arguably the most brutal, unforgiving tragedy in the entire history of Los Angeles. In the early 1950s, she possessed a massive Universal Studios contract, breathtaking blonde beauty, and a seemingly limitless trajectory toward A-list superstardom. However, her involvement in a highly publicized, incredibly violent romantic love triangle permanently branded her as deeply uncastable by the morally rigid studio executives. Completely blacklisted and aggressively stripped of her massive income, Payton spiraled violently into severe, unrelenting alcoholism. The precipitous drop from luxurious Hollywood mansions to the absolute gutter was shockingly rapid. Within a mere decade, the once glamorous starlet was devastatingly forced into street prostitution on Hollywood Boulevard merely to survive and fund her debilitating addiction. She courageously penned a brutally honest, entirely unrepentant memoir exposing the chilling hypocrisy of the studio system, but the horrific physical damage of severe alcohol abuse and extreme poverty had already decimated her organs. Passing away at the heartbreaking age of 39 from liver failure, Payton's life remains the ultimate, terrifying testament to exactly how aggressively and completely Hollywood will utterly annihilate a woman who ceases to be a profitable, compliant commodity.